Welcome back. European countries are increasing efforts to curb violence among football fans, but it's not often known what motivates the thousands of hooligans across Europe. Hooligan groups are mostly made up of young men from all walks of life and can be highly organised. The fiercest clashes between European football fans has been at club level and not between national teams. Hooligan gangs widely use mobile phones and the internet to coordinate with rivals and schedule street brawls. Gangs can be underpinned by extremist ideology. Supporters of Spanish clubs have been blamed for racist abuse, and some UK and Italian football gangs are known to have strong far-right and nationalist leanings. Well, joining us again are our guests in Düsseldorf, Andreas Piastowski, head of the Central Sports Intelligence Unit and a member of the working group that prepared the anti-hooliganism strategy for the World Cup 2006. In Bologna, Italy, Ashley Green, coordinator for Progetto Ultra, an NGO dedicated to protecting football fan culture, and in Milan, Italy, John Foote, an expert in Italian football and author of Calcio, a history of Italian football and reader in modern Italian history. Welcome back, gentlemen, to the second half. Mr. Foote, how organised are these groups? Do they have a hierarchy, payrolls even?
They're extremely organised. I would say they're almost businesses. These are groups that have often been around for some 20, 25 years. They've got long histories, although they change, and there's quite a complicated pattern of control of the stadiums. And I think one of the things that I'm not a big fan of the word hooligan. I think they are ultra, they're organised football fans. They don't use violence for violence sake. They use violence as a means, as organised violence. And I think that marks them out from what we saw with the hooligans in Britain in the 70s and 80s. And yes, they have leaders and they have followers and they have recruits, and it's almost a kind of military organisation in many ways.
Interesting. Ashley Green, do you agree that they are sort of moderate ultras, and that particularly you, as some sort of go-between between the ultras and the authorities, can create a forum and some sort of dialogue between the two?
I think it's vital that we separate ultras and hooligans. It's actually the most important thing. We're not talking about a group of people that only gather for violence. We're talking about a social phenomenon that's been around football in Italy for not even 25, maybe 40 years right now. The first group was 1969. So it has a hierarchy. It has been going through social changes for the last decades, political connections, political somehow belonging and participation by the youth, and it's been probably the longest lasting youth aggregation movement in Italy for a while. That's why I'm talking about, if we don't accept it as a social phenomenon, relevant and complex, we cannot understand it. That's probably the reason why I was saying that you need something, some middleman in between the police forces, the authorities, the institutions, and the football fans, the ultras groups, in order to give somehow a sense of responsibility also, a sense of positive dialogue, and probably that way you can also promote some sense of responsibility within the groups themselves in order to limit violence and limit the negative parts that are indeed the violent components that are indeed existing within ultras.
Andreas Piastowski, let's talk a little bit about Germany 2006, which you helped make sure ran smoothly. Let's talk about watch lists or no-go lists. Were there a lot of people on some sort of blacklist, and how did you find a way of figuring out who these people were?
Well, when we're talking about blacklists, sure, we have a list of known hooligans and of known people who tend to be violent at football matches. And what we did was we used preventive measures, like visiting them with police officers just to warn them that they are known. And we put movements restrictions on them like they do in Great Britain to prevent them from reaching the venue sites.
Do you believe that there's a lack maybe of intelligence or sharing of intelligence between different nations when it comes to certain groups, and that's why you still have problems no matter how organized tournaments are?
It has become very much better during the last decade because the European Union has empowered a law, a recommendation that everybody every state in Europe, every government has to have a national football information point. That means by now we have a very close cooperation within the European police and exchanging all these information about different hooligan groups, about the differences of hooliganism in Europe, so that we can learn what is called best practice.
Ashley Green, surely that must be quite encouraging for someone like you to hear.
Well, it's encouraging, but that's actually knowing who the violent people are. Until I'm talking especially about Italy, until we get a decision to actually talk to the people, to the leaders, to the groups, and confront them with what their needs are, maybe what they would like from football, how they would like football to change, how they would like modern stadiums to change. Just to give you an example, we have Germany here. In Germany, when it was time to change football stadiums in that country, initially they thought of all seated stadiums as it is in the UK, but then they understood that the fan culture was very important, and they decided to keep certain sectors of the stadium for standing fans, because thousands of fans actually prefer to watch a game standing. If we don't start understanding things like this, understanding what the fan culture is like, what its needs are, I don't think we can actually believe we did everything we could to limit violence. That's probably the main thing. We need to promote some sort of dialogue, some sort of cultural, social mediation. And it's never been done in Italy. We've been trying to promote this concept, this strategy, but without any luck until now. I hope this time something changes, but I'm afraid Italian institutions are not actually willing to listen.
John Foot, when do you think policing and a heavy-handed approach starts infringing upon the basic rights of people, particularly those ordinary people who just want to appear at a football match at a stadium and enjoy the game?
I think that's a very long-term problem. It's become very unpleasant to go to a football stadium for all fans over quite a long period of time, and that's why I think one of the reasons why spectators have been falling in numbers over quite a long trend of that. I'd like to say, however, that I think we mustn't mix up fans and necessarily an ultra. Ultra are a tiny minority of football fans. There are 26 million football fans in Italy. The ultra were maybe 100,000 or something like that. So let's remember also the vast majority of fans who, at Bergamo last week, when the ultra was smashing up one of the stadiums and stopping the game, wanted the game to go on. I think we remember that fans is not necessarily just the hardcore fans. I think they also need to be taken into consideration, and they're kind of victims of this because their whole experience is ruined by the kind of securitization, the militarization of the stadiums. I say take down the barriers straight away. Ashley
Green, do you agree?
Take down the barriers without actually having some form of, as I said before, of confrontation, of dialogue could be dangerous, but it could be something. It could be positive. Take the police out of the stadiums. Actually, we're talking about stewards in Italy. Finally, get the stewards, train them, most of all, pay them. Right now, football clubs in Italy want stewards, and they want either not to pay them or just give them €20 per game. That's obviously nonsense. That's why we still don't have stewards right now in the stadiums, and we still have the police inside. Outside, it's obviously a different matter.
In Düsseldorf, Andreas Piastowski, what about other sports? Why does this level of violence only seem to be football specific?
I don't know that for sure, but what we figured out is that we have almost the same supporters in ice hockey matches, for example, but there no such thing as violent clashes or something like that happens, and that wonders. That is what it is. So it seems to be a tradition in football or somehow connected with football, but I think some research must be done to see what tradition that is.
John Foot, your opinion on that?
I think it's a very long running social, cultural and economic question. Football is easily the most important game in the world now. In Italy, it's a sort of religion. It's encouraged the formation of fans who live their lives through football, and therefore it's become an extremely important part of their lives over a very long period of time, and therefore you do get all kinds of tensions, emotions and so on coming out through the game, and I think that's one of the explanations for that.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on Inside Story in Düsseldorf. Andreas Piastowski, Senior Police Officer and Head of the Central Sports Intelligence Unit, member of the working group that prepared the anti-hooliganism strategy for Germany 2006. In Bologna, Ashley Green, coordinator of Progetto Ultra, an NGO dedicated to protecting football fan culture. And in Milan, John Foote, expert in Italian football and author of Calcio, a history of Italian football and reader in modern Italian history. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I hope the beauty hasn't been taken out of the beautiful game. And thank you so much, the viewer, for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We welcome your comments and your suggestions. You can email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. That's insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye-bye for now. We'll see you soon.